If I can have everybody's attention, I'd like to call the Nash Rocky Mount Board of Education to order. I will entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
So, moved by Ms. Chavis, second by Mr. Silver. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, likewise. Motion carried.
And I'd likewise like to call the recess meeting for May the 6th for the Nash County Board of Commissioners back to order at this time. Mr. Lamb.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. I want to apologize for the change of venue. I'll take full responsibility for that because we did not realize that Nash Community College was having graduation this week, and that's the reason Brown Auditorium was not available. We're here to talk about the new school. We needed a new school in the northern end of the county for many years. We've been planning for a new school for 5 years. We've had 2 new school group meetings that have been very productive. We've had 3 individual town hall meetings, one at Swift Creek, one at Cedar Grove, and one at Red Oak. And we have a larger meeting tonight because we're working with our partners, the Nash County Commissioners. We wanted them to see the tool that we're using to help us plan for the location of this new school, and the transparency is evident for everybody. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Shelton Jeffries.
Thank you, Chairman Lamb. I'd like to say good evening to both boards and want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Thomas Dudley and Matthew Palmer. They're with the Operations Research and Education Laboratory. They're headquartered out of NC State University. Their organization has an impeccable reputation as it relates to leading and supporting districts through these types of logistical challenges. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, all. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just want to take a moment and thank the students who volunteered as ushers and greeters. That's the first for us. We don't normally get greeted by the folks that we're ultimately all here to support, so that's a nice touch this evening. My name is Matthew Palmer. I'm with North Carolina State University, based out of Raleigh. We're on Centennial Campus. My colleague, come on. Mr. Thomas Dudley is here as well, and collectively we support school districts all over the Southeast, but especially here in North Carolina. It's unique times. We are both growing in many ways in parts of our communities, and in other parts also shrinking. So we bring data science to hard questions regarding what's likely to happen for school districts over a 10-year horizon line. And tonight we're going to introduce our team, our methods, our process, our history as a group. Here to answer questions for you about how we tackle our work and ultimately what we're producing for you all. So with that, let me get started here. And I would ask, if you have questions as we go through this, we are here to get it right. And we are here to make sure that the public, the Board of Education, the county commissioners, Superintendent Jeffries, and anyone else that has questions, those get answered as we go through this. So please, if we come across a concept or a question, feel free. This is really intended to be participatory and open-ended. Raise your hand and let us know, okay? Any questions before we start? All right, very good.
It's very hard to hear you. I don't know whether you need to move the mic closer or what.
Is that easier?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
It's
I'm
that
not sure
baritone
about
voice.
people in
You
the
gotta
back.
get it, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
We'll just cut the power to the sonic machine and then Sure, I can do that. I'm gonna wheel around here, if that makes it easier. Is that too far, or are we good? Easier?
Maybe just me.
No, it's not.
What's that? Is it better now? Okay, good. So big picture, integrated planning for communities and schools. I think we all in this room know that schools matter a lot. They have profound effects. You know, when you see the motto for Nash County, right? Where business meets opportunity. And certainly when it relates to opportunity, we think about schools. That's where our young go to grow and become members of our societies. So districts and communities rely on one another to succeed and grow. In North Carolina here, there is a gap in the planning, and by that I mean traditionally we do not have an integrated planning mandate from the state. We have other states like Florida where city and county planners work with school district planners to make sure that when they approve a neighborhood, there's room in the school. In North Carolina, we don't have that mandate, and so as a function, our group, our role within the operations research and education laboratory is to make sure that districts have the information they need to make tough calls. So just a quick overview here. We know that schools are tasked with building, leading, and cultivating the 21st century workforce. That relates right back into economic development. We're talking about recruiting firms to come to an area. Oftentimes, the very first question that an economic developer has to answer is, how's your community college system? How's your school pipeline? Are your students graduating ready to perform in the workplace? That leads into, again, recruitment and retention of jobs. And oftentimes, the importance of the visible and physical and functional quality of a school facility. Certainly, we know indoor air quality, other factors lead to student outcomes. But in addition to that, we have school quality and relationships to tax value of homes, proximity to homes, and so forth. And ultimately, in many ways, schools are the heartbeat of our communities. Relating back to the district objectives, we know, again, schools are related to health outcomes. When we talk about indoor air quality especially, one of the first things you notice when you open the door of a school is, how does it smell? Right? If you catch that mold whiff, you know that there's other problems going on there. Education outcomes, again, school quality being directly associated with student achievement, and job generators at the community level. School construction generates jobs. So again, there's a spectrum of communication, collaboration, and coordination. What we've seen so far, we've been through 2 weeks of interviews, is you've got an incredible group of community partners that are coming together for this project. You've got district leadership that is sitting in on every one of these conversations and making sure the information is transparent and available for everyone. Our job is to record that and to really bridge the space between city and county planning, economic development, and ultimately, as it relates back to the school district. So together we take the guesswork out and ensure that you have objective, quality, good data to make tough calls. We do that through 3 steps. So the first thing that we do is we want to account for future growth by talking about what's been approved at the residential development level for neighborhoods. So we do that through meeting with municipal planners, county planning, and we've done that already here in Nash County, as well as Nashville and the city of Rocky Mount. Closer? Okay, thank you. In addition, we take that information and pair it with historic enrollment data. So we can look at how many students have been coming out of the district, not only at the bigger picture level, but at the neighborhood levels. So we get a sense of, in a particular neighborhood, historically, how many students are coming out. If you've got 100 homes, are they producing 5 students a year, 10 students a year, or 20 students a year? And then we can roll that up into a larger district level forecast to say, what are we looking at from an enrollment projection? What's the school capacities? And that's when we get into conversations with new school construction and how that might look. So I want to walk you through this here. These are our specific steps and deliverables. We are about 3/4 of the way through the land use study, and we'll wrap that up next week. As I said, we've already met with county planning leaders as well as municipal leaders here. Talked with NCDOT, the MPO, others, that we're ensuring that we have all the information. right? Transportation, economic development, residential development. We want to get this right. What growth are we looking at over the next, give or take, 10 years? We know right now already we've got over 1,000 units coming online. That's going to relate back to your student capacities. Mr. Dudley, who's going to present next, will talk about the enrollment forecast. What does that mean for the next 10 years? We do an age sort of cohort year-by-year analysis, and that rolls up into what we would consider our facility utilization at the school level. So we go school by school and walk through capacities to understand what are those capacities of the school and what could they be under different simulated circumstances. That then leads to what we call optimization. So if you're looking at adjusting student enrollment boundaries, what could that be? And we want to make sure that the community is involved throughout the process. And that's part of what tonight's presentation is about. So again, my name is Matthew Palmer with NC State University. Mr. Dudley is here as well. Back at Raleigh, we have Elizabeth Daniel, who is our GIS analyst. We're housed on Centennial Campus. And we do this through a series of steps. Interviews, GIS analysis. When we say GIS, we're talking about geospatial information systems. We're really taking every address of every student in the district, understanding where they live, and doing that across the entire district. What we ultimately bring to this process is we're here as a community partner, but we are not here from the district nor from the county commissioners. We are ultimately a third-party group to ensure that this is done in public interest and transparently for everyone to have this information. I know this is fine print, but you'll see here, we have a long history of working with Nash Rocky Mount schools. From 2004 to 2012, nearly every year we were doing this work. It's nice to be back. When we talk about the land use studies themselves, as I said, we look at both the historical piece, historically what's happened, but we also pair this with your local knowledge, learning from your local folks in the community, your leaders in the community that are in planning at the county and municipal levels. We also talk to folks, as I said, NCDOT, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We want to make sure that we have that information accurate. As you're getting transportation improvements, we want to know where that is, so that's going to influence commute times and travel patterns and where folks live. We even consider water and sewer systems and capacities and understand where those are so that when we look towards residential growth, we have a good sense of where it's likely to be. And again, with economic development, we're really looking at jobs, and we're trying to understand, when we talk Triangle Tire, CSX, or Corning, how many jobs are going to come with that? Where are they likely to come from, and where are those folks likely to live? So here's who we've talked to so far. As I said, the city of Rocky Mount, town of Nashville, Nash County, and Edgecombe County. The MPO, I misspoke earlier, we'll actually be speaking with DOT, I believe, early next week. And then we're going to talk with economic development as well next week. So we're actively scheduling out the remainder of our interviews to make sure that we have this all taken care of by the end of the month. And with that, we'll roll right into Mr. Dudley's work, where we've collected the residential development data. We have a clean data set that all of these stakeholders will have a chance to see. Make sure we have all of our rooftop numbers right. Make sure that we have all the information about approved projects correct. And then he'll do the hard work of really putting this all into what we call a spatial model and really getting a sense of what are we likely to see over a 10-year horizon line. So with that, let me bring him up. He's going to talk you through the enrollment forecasting process, how all this information fits together. And before I hand it over, just one question. With what I've covered so far, are there any questions on this piece? I'll take that as a very affirmative, we're good, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. So in addition to the land use study information that Matthew has spoken about residential developments going in, economic development, things like that, we also take into consideration things like resident live births, as well as the historic membership trends of what's been going on in the district. And with all that information together, we're able to create an enrollment forecast that looks out for the next 10 years. Breaking that down further, instead of just the one total for the system-wide level, we have what we call our out-of-capacity table, which is our quick visual way of trying to show where you have capacity needs. This is a utilization table, in other words. And so working sort of from left to right here, we have the name of the school, we have the school's capacity, we have the current membership as reported by NCDPI, and then we have the ORED forecast, which looks forward at the school level, how many students to expect at each one of these facilities for each year going out over the next 10 years. The coloring that you see there is based on utilization, so it's the number of students divided by the school's capacity. Green is good, so a school that's either a little under capacity or potentially even underutilized, and then all the way up through red, meaning a school that's overutilized. These can also be used in sort of what-if scenarios, so considering situations like what happens when, like we're looking at now, the full implementation of House Bill 90, which limits classroom sizes for K through 3 classrooms. So this is a before and after, looking at what the impact of that legislation, that policy was on a particular school district. So that's sort of the end of the problem identification part of the projects that we present. Once we've done the land use study, once we've created that school level forecast, we know where there are issues, pairing that with facility condition and age data as well. So from there, it's time to start seriously considering what potential solutions there are to address the issues that you're having. And so we look at, there are potential options like adding mobile units or adding new schools or the combination of multiple factors, all of which typically sort of feed into reassignment, redistricting. And so when you start talking about reassignment, you start talking about all these issues and things that we have up on the screen, these different priorities that people have as they're looking to complete redistricting efforts. If you speak with school leadership, they'll typically, and ORED as well, we typically look at these first two priorities very thoroughly, balancing utilization, so minimizing the red you see in that table, maximizing student proximity to schools. We've never been in a situation where anyone has argued that that's a bad thing. And then as members of the community, perhaps there are other considerations that are more important to them as well, including things like respecting neighborhoods, contiguity, or maintaining feeder patterns, things like that. And these are all concerns that district leadership has. They're all concerns that county commissioners, I'm sure, have as well, and lay people. Everyone has their own perspective on this, and this is why can be so challenging and difficult sometimes to put together reasonable assignment plans, because everyone has their own priorities that they're trying to sort of fight for. So what's the value once we get to this stage in the process? What's the value of ORED? Why are we here? So these particular priorities that we have circled are priorities that we can, strictly speaking, model. We can put into our math, we can defensively put together an assignment policy that takes these particular priorities into account. So again, that's balancing utilization, maximizing student proximity to schools, if desired demographic balancing, respecting neighborhoods, as sort of a caveat, maintaining feeder patterns we're usually pretty well aware of and we can handle that reasonably well. And then as part of an additional conversation, we can start talking about things like busing efficiency and logistics. Because we also at ITRI, the Institute for Transportation Research and Education, house the TIMS program, which does school bus routing support for all districts across North Carolina. So that is where that fits in. And the way that we're able to do those things, the way that we're able to add those contributions to the assignment process is through optimization and operations research algorithms that we've been using since really the late 90s. And what that is able to incorporate would be information such as building capacities and locations of your schools, student level forecast at the neighborhood level where a student's going to be in the future. And we use that information along with board-defined criteria to put together draft assignment plans. The beauty of all of that is it's defensible, it's math-based, it does not pick on individual students. It is a system-wide way of looking at a complex problem. Talking visually about what we're looking at here on the left, you'll see new school sites for Wake County, the circles. That's where we estimated that new schools should be built in Wake County. This is just elementary schools looking out over a 10-year period. On the right side of the slide, you'll see Harnett County. They built a new middle school several years back, the far western school. It's called Highland Middle School. And they took that opportunity to relieve the overcrowding at many of the other schools that were in proximity to it. We helped create the attendance zones for that, which have filled the school nicely, and it is not overcrowded, and several of the neighboring schools are not still. That was 5 or 6 years ago. Just a brief case study talking a little bit more about Wake County Public Schools. We provide them behind the scenes with the number of schools that they would need, the ideal school location, school timing, including the priorities of when particular new schools would need to come online to be able to address overcrowding in the particular spots where it's forecasted to occur. I'm not going to read this, rest assured. This is just a technical workflow that's there for your reference later if you want to dig into it. It's a sophisticated workflow that we do for Wake County Public Schools. We developed it over 10 years ago. Suffice to say, from a technical perspective, as new challenges arise for new districts, and I realize every district is unique, but when new challenges arise, we're ready to face those challenges from a technical perspective. With that, I'd like to conclude with our timeline, mentioning first where we are today with the, by the end of the month, the conclusion of the land use study coming from March through May of 2019. In the summer, in the next 2 months, we'll be looking at enrollment forecasting. That was that graph looking out over the next 10 years, what's going to happen system-wide. I would say probably it would be then July, looking at the out-of-capacity table, the school-level forecast, pairing together all the residential development data that Matthew has, is in the process of collecting. And then looking at the fall, August, and further on, we're talking about that next step of identifying solutions and looking at new school siting optimization as well as attendance boundaries. Are there any questions?
What size site would you be probably recommending for the construction of this school?
It certainly varies widely. Mr. Palmer, did you have any thoughts on that one in particular? I mean, I know we have best practices that we follow, and it varies by county, it varies by, well, all sorts of things, but did you have any thoughts on that one?
So one of the things that North Carolina Department of Public Instruction does that's very helpful is provide design and architectural consultation, particularly around school site size, and it really is a formula based on the grade levels being served, the overall student size, and there are basically tiers for acreage depending on the size of the campus as well as the number of students being served. So that's one of the considerations that as you look at new facilities, you know, typically we would say at a minimum 15 acres, but more likely to be, you know, it really will vary depending on the size of the school. So it's sort of a 15 acres and up type formula that's used.
Dr. Palmer, it may be helpful if Mr. Davis, you'll share when we were applying for the application, what was the target population that we centered that on? We worked those numbers on. 700 to 800 student facility.
Okay, and we can get back to you with a specific what that equates to in their formula, certainly.
But I believe there has been talk about as much as 900 or 950 since that time.
And that will influence ultimately.
I just didn't want you to get on that 700 to 800 because this is a high growth area.
Yeah.
I have a question about your the work you did here back last decade. Were you doing redistricting studies, things like that? I saw you were here every year for.
You know, quite honestly,
You don't know?
I personally was not here.
Okay,
I was
okay.
working on my doctorate at the time, so I can't speak to that. But Thomas, do you have any historical?
I don't have any real insight. I wasn't involved in 2012.
It might have been
They
dealing
were
with the
involved with
school.
Nash Central, and they were also involved with us when we redistricted the board
Okay, okay.
members.
Gotcha, thank you.
For future growth, I'm hearing the figures, what, from 700 to 900 students, but now, if you're gonna build for future growth, which that is an area, at least on the east side, is growing. Probably one of the fastest growing areas in the county. So, if you're gonna plan for future growth, we certainly probably need to go beyond 900 students. Now, that's just my opinion. Your study may say something different, but I've heard 900 students now, you're looking at probably 900. So future growth probably should plan in a well-constructed school with good technology and it can last for a number of years, and the growth in that area ought to be considered.
Would you repeat the question or comment on it, because
Yes.
our audience can't hear what's being said, and talk loud so everybody can hear what's going on, so it'll be fair to
Where we're at, if I may. As chairman of our board, we, on our school committee, have an idea of where we're headed with the number of students. My understanding is this exercise here with these gentlemen is to let them go through the process and they verify what we think or tell us why we are off base. So I don't know how we can answer that question tonight till you get through with that. And of course, when I look at your timeline, we're in a pretty large hurry. I think the commissioners might be in a little bit more hurried mood than the school board, but we're probably not 30 days apart, hopefully, and your timeline doesn't fit our timeline for getting it back to us, quite frankly. And the question is, can we speed it up any, or how much more can you do to finish up what you're doing? Because we are depending on you to verify what we think. 950 students is what we think, but we don't have any scientific evidence to verify that. So that's why the school board wanted to and why you've been hired. Is that not correct, Mr. Lamb? So that's where we really are.
I just wanted to say that pretty much piggyback on what Chairman Davis said. We're trying to expedite this process. We got deadlines we're trying to meet, and the right side is we want that done pretty quick. I mean, we want to put a shovel in the hand and put a hard hat on, break ground pretty much. What we're trying to say, what I'm trying to say, I can't speak on everybody on the board, but that's pretty much expediting the process. That's all I'm asking.
In commenting and piggybacking on what I'm hearing, Dr. Jeffries, are we within the time, is this within the timeline that we had as a board had discussed? This is the timeline that was presented before we started the collaboration with the small ad hoc committee between both boards. I think it's important to comment that ORED is going to work their process, and they understand the sense of urgency between both boards. They've shared how it's important that they meet with all entities that are involved. So right now, it's projections, but they're going to give us the hard numbers by talking with representatives from Nash County, Rocky Mount City, and Edgecombe as it relates to current permits, doing the demography studies. So really, the numbers that they get in will help in terms of applying the algorithms and their process. I think the best thing we can do is make ourselves available, make our staffs available, so that they can work their process and those numbers, and then let us know if there are areas where there are barriers that we can help to expedite the process. Is that accurate, sir?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, what I've heard Mr. Palmer say several times, we want to get this right. So I heard you say that about 2 or 3 times.
Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Ms. Chambers?
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you for being here and bringing us up to date. We do need these powerful numbers to make accurate decisions. Our timeline concern is funding sources. We as a board have been in situations where we know the state has things out and promised and then wind up pulling some back. We want to make sure we capture all of our funding piece. I do believe the numbers that you're hearing, 950 to wherever it's falling, we do not want to build a school and then 2 days later have trailers sitting there. So I think you will give us some guideline on future growth, but we put together schools in the past that were less than a few months old and trailers are showing up. So I think that's where the extra numbers, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody's been on the other gathering committee, that was the thought behind it, so.
The first time y'all presented this to us, some things have changed. Have y'all been notified or informed, like, what timelines we're looking for, or is this just hitting y'all blindside? I'm just curious. Because it's unfair to you all for me to sit here and ask bang questions at you, and you're like, what's he talking about? Are you aware of the timelines we're looking at?
We have a set time frame that we go through and do our process, and that's what we've been doing. So there hasn't been additional,
Since the
communication.
first meeting, you hadn't heard anything about the timelines or the stipulations or anything?
And if there is a date that we need to hit the spot, then certainly it would be helpful for us to have something we can talk about offline.
All right. Thank you.
So you want to build a school tomorrow?
If I could do it this afternoon, I'd do it this afternoon.
The one piece that I want to mention here, and this goes back to getting it right. Nash and Rocky Mount School District and your stakeholders in your community are in a very unique window right now as it pertains to development. And if you'll give me the flexibility to walk you through why that is. The majority of the development that we're seeing at the moment has to do with the build out of projects that date back to the 2008 recession. Right? So in many ways, you've still got capacity and demand to sort of finish off those neighborhoods. Concurrent to that, you've got the future Interstate 87 corridor, Interstate 95, CSX, Triangle Tire, Corning coming in just across the county line. And concurrent to that, you've got you've got water and sewer capacity, which many of your adjacent neighbors do not. And so when you look big picture, I understand the emphasis on timeliness. But I would also, encourage you to, we've got as Mr. Dudley said clearly, we've got a process here that, we will get it right for you. If there's anyone, and I want to go back to that stakeholder list, if there's anyone that you think we should speak with that we have not already identified, please let us know. Yes, sir.
I noticed on the list, you didn't have the elected officials from the area which the school is going to serve. You have 2 commissioners and 2 school board members that serve that area where these 3 schools are located. I would think you would want them on the list.
If that's helpful, we'll say traditionally we focus on the professional staff at the municipal and county levels in part because we're trying to get as close as possible to the raw data. And by that I mean approved permits, certificate of occupancy rates, that kind of detailed year-by-year analysis. That being said, if it's prudent for the board and it's prudent for the commissioners to have us meet with folks, we can have those meetings as well. I just wanted to be clear about why we've not explored that avenue, because we try to be efficient with your time and ours and go right to the sources at the planning and permitting levels whenever possible.
I understand how you go about it, but you won't have the history of the dynamics of the politics in the area you're working in. And when you get near the end, I think it would be serving all of us well if you would circle back around with the elected officials in that area.
Understood?
And Mr. Lamb, if you disagree with me, please say
I
so.
think, that's very well, that's the reason we put that new school planning group, I'm not gonna call it a committee.
No, it's not a committee.
No, new school planning group together is to have that type of conversation.
Right.
I had a comment. I you, and I agree to a large extent, but we want it to be very transparent for the total community. Children don't care much about politics, only adults do. We've got to get it right for them. So where we have input, I think we should also be careful we don't overextend our political agenda so that all kids are fairly served. I think we have that capability as a group, as a community of boards, that we can probably be valuable, but we have to be careful. So in doing that, you can kind of guide us a little bit. I agree some input would be good because it is a different animal out here in every district you move through. District 1, for example, has a lot of hunting land and it's sparsely populated, and you have kids that could be, if we're not careful, getting on buses at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we do probably have some input that could be valuable, but we want to make sure we're staying transparent and not biased.
And in fairness to the professionals of OR-Ed, they have a high level of technical expertise to help guide the process. The chairman of both boards and the representatives on the ad hoc construct that we have will help us and give guidance to staff on how we navigate the politics. So that's how the partnership is designed to work. It's also important to remember that while we have one project that creates a great deal of urgency, the data that they're going to provide is a 10-year forecast to guide future projects based on demography as well. So they're really having to balance two competing issues. But our partnership with them is if we can get all of the information through the construct that both chairs have set up, we'll make sure we inform our partners on how we can make adjustments, but their process really is dictated by the data that the region provides to them.
And to that point, we've gotten great feedback from your staff. If there was an issue, if there's a barrier, we will let you know, but we've had no issues on your community partner side. Yes, sir.
Would y'all be recommending the size? I mean, you've heard everything from 700 to 950. Based on your data, given that there's excess capacity throughout and a redistricting of the whole district would eliminate trailers probably. As the manager, my biggest concern is the dollars, and we've got a commitment of $20 million, and you know, a 950 might put it up to 24 million, a 700 might make it 18. Do y'all get involved in the size of the school, given that we do have excess capacity and we're really being driven by that dollar number? Certainly if you build a 700 or 800, because we only have 20 million and that's what it costs, we would want there to be wings for expansion, like every school is now. But will y'all be making a recommendation on the size of the school?
So we'll have a pretty good idea of what size school you really need, but you run into this this sort of trade-off between school size versus how far are you going to redistrict, what's your redistricting impact region going to be. So the best that we can do in situations like that is to present you with as many viable options as we can.
Good answer. I like options.
Well, the options are good, but the thing about it is, I've been in this school system a long time, and we want to do it right. I cannot remember a new school project like Ms. Chavis and some of the other board members said, that pretty soon after a new school, we didn't drag up some trailers pretty soon thereafter. And, you know, I know we don't want to build it too large, but we need to do the right thing and build it so we can be guaranteed. I would love to see a new school built where we're guaranteed for 5 years not to have a trailer.
Well, one thing about trailers is, given the excess capacity of this district, what it takes, everybody has an aversion towards redistricting. So if after 3 or 4 years you're outgrowing a school, then that's the time to start looking at redistricting, not putting in trailers.
I just cannot remember a new school being built.
Yeah, yeah, I know it happens
Yeah.
everywhere, yeah. Yeah, people, they start bringing in trailers rather than making the hard decision of redistricting.
That is, that's very much where, that is the charge of people, is to let us know. Credit to Dr. Jeffries and Mr. Miller who have been. I thought I had a good projection voice, but I don't think so. Not in here. I'll have to get back to my teaching voice. All I wanted to say is credit to Dr. Jeffries for his leadership, Mr. Miller for making sure we had access cards to meet with everyone, being there for each of the meetings. You know, some school districts, when they go through this process, they say, we'll see you in September, right? They don't go through and sit through every meeting and make sure we get it right. They don't sharpen the pencils to make sure the numbers are accurate. So credit to your leadership to make sure we're getting this right and making sure that the folks are coming to the table to meet with us. We will work quickly and we will make sure that we get it as accurate as can be given available data. As we go through multiple simulations, as we go through multiple scenarios, that does get us closer to that fall time period. So there's a sweet spot there. We'll rely on feedback from district leadership to produce the priorities for assignment and to, again, you know, carefully walk us through the questions that you all have so that we can answer those for you. And we'll use objective data that's transparent to do that. Any last questions on?
I noticed in one of your comments, you made this statement about, I think you said you had two tables, one prior to the classroom reduction bill and one not taking, or taking that into account. Will you continue that process all the way through what you bring back to us, knowing that that can get kicked down the road right steady and may continually get kicked down the road? When it goes into effect and it's been looked at again to kick it again. So that would be good to keep seeing it both ways.
And it's a critical question because that school level capacity
Oh, yeah.
is
We realize
going to
that.
drive a lot of the back end work.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But do you intend to show it to us with and without it in what you bring to us? Is that possible?
It is possible, yes, sir.
Of course, you're employed by the school board. They need to make that request, not me.
One final comment. One final comment I'll make. I'm not saying this is true, but I've heard it, that we may talk about redistricting after we build a school. My take on this, all those children who attend those three schools now that we are going to consolidate ought to be able to attend that new modern school rather than redistrict off to some other school that may not have the technology that the new school will have.
I think it's important to remember during our town halls and community engagement, we mentioned that it would be a combination process, that it may involve some redistricting along with the new project. So we've been clear about that all along the way, that the partnership with ORED is going to provide the Board of Education with multiple options to consider. And of course, the commissioners are a funding partner, so would be in consideration with you as well. But redistricting has been on the table at every point of community engagement.
Mr. Chair, I know we are getting questions from each board, but I was wondering if there are people from our community that are here tonight that had some questions that they wanted answered or, you know.
My name is Clementine Dantzler, and I am a Nash County product of Nash County Schools. Attended a school that everybody want to forget, Averton Community School, that no longer exists, and I am afraid that the children will be forgotten just like I was. I had to walk to school 2 years No bus provided. Swift Creek was built. Swift Creek is special to me. And if a new school is going to be built, and what I'm hearing, you want to put a rush on this new school because the money is there, and I want you to use your money, but I want our children, the products of my community, poverty, my community, the community that's up around Castalia, Averton, Jernikins, just before you get in Halifax County, farmers, people that you think don't pay taxes. I want my community, the children in that community, the children whose parents may not be able to stand here and say what I say tonight, the parents who are older and they are raising their grandchildren. They do count, and you may not see them, but I am so afraid of what I'm hearing tonight, that money is so important. Yes, it is. Voting will get money. I know that too. Redistricting is really to get rid of those unwanted, desirable people. And I have felt that all my life, a product of Nash County schools, who couldn't even provide a bus for me to walk. And now you want to do it to the children in the community. Get them up early in the morning. Parents sometimes can feed them, sometimes they can't. You get them to school, and I know what I'm talking about because I work for Nash Rocky Mount Schools. You get them to school, we get them off the bus, and we rush them to the cafeteria. 10 minutes, they're back in the class, not even time to use the bathroom because the core classes are starting. You got a child sitting there haven't even used the bathroom since he got off the bus because he needs to eat. Now, they gotta wait till lunchtime, 20 minutes. I don't know if it's 20 or 30 now, but 20 minutes in the past. You rush them to eat. And then you want them to sit in that chair in that classroom after riding 2 hours in the morning. And I'm only speaking, I no longer have children in the school system, but I love children. And what I want is for it not to happen like it happened to me. And I can truly tell you, I was a product that was forgotten. And it hurts. So when you hurt one, you hurt all. So your money is important. I know this. I vote. My husband votes. Served 31 years in the military. I am very happy to stand here and say, I want a new school too. But I want our children to have what they need first, because I love my community. Thank you.
Thank you. And your name again? Mrs. Dancer, thank you so much for that comment and sharing and reminding us the importance of being really deliberate about this process. I apologize that you've gotten that message. We were, meaning the Board of Education and the commissioners, they've all articulated the exact same concerns. We had a series of town hall meetings, and we learned a lot about some mistakes that the district has made in the past, to be brutally honest. One of the issues was the first issue you raised about how during consolidation, it's easy for the closing school to lose its identity. In fact, we were reminded of a horrible example where an archive was discarded, thrown in the trash. So we learned a lot through this process. Both boards are fiercely committed to making sure that the community is heard. We're learning from past mistakes, and we want to make sure that everyone has a voice in the process, particularly the Board of Education. That has been their #1 commitment to community engagement. So we hear you, and the reality of the funding is just a brutal reality, but we will not lose any sight of the children. Both boards are fiercely committed to advocating, and they want what's best for the children too. But thank you so much for your voice this evening.
I got a loud voice. Good evening. My question is this. I keep hearing 30 days, and I'm sitting here fall of 2019. Why are we pushing 30 days instead of going out to the fall of 2019 to give them the opportunity to meet the deadline of fall 2019? Why do we want to push it up in a 30 days to break the ground? Why are we moving it up?
I believe it ain't 30 days, it's 120 days.
It's 120 days, but when the state superintendent tells the chairman of our county commissioners that the money is there, that the state has a way, like Ms. Chavis said earlier, the state has a way of giving and the state has a way of taking away. We need to speed up the process as much as we can, but still be fair and transparent. We have always been transparent. We've had 3 town halls. We've had 2 new school planning meetings, not committee. And we're having a meeting tonight. And, you know, some of the people on the committee have heard me say this before. Transparency should not lead to paralysis. Now, if we use all the data, keep collecting all the data, the same kids that we are using for data for entering kindergarten now will never get to use the new school by the time they're in the 6th grade at Red Oak Middle. And you know, when the state superintendent says the money's there, you need to look at utilizing that money, we need to heed to that advice. So that's one reason we're having a meeting tonight.
I just wanted to know why we're moving it up.
Well, we're not gonna rush anything, but if we can speed up to utilize the funding that we have now, and both boards are agreeable that we need to do that.
I think you thought we said move it up to 30 days. What we were speaking of, the timeline that we are hoping for moves it up 30 days from what we're looking at, not to 30 days. It's 120 days, which puts us about 30, it puts us in August instead of September. That's the only difference, okay.
Any other questions from the community?
What actually is your timeline? I've heard a lot of people saying timeline, but what actually is timeline?
The target that you see up on the projection screen right now was what was approved. I think you've heard how nuanced this process is. One of the majority of our time now has been dedicated to convening, bringing together the professionals from all representative groups in the region. As they collect more data, they'll begin to be able to work the numbers. The leadership is coming from the representative group from both boards to inform us on how they want the process to move forward. But it's critical that we lean on the expertise of ORED and their tried and true process, but there are also other contingencies that will guide it. So that was the target before we started the work. We're now beginning the work, and it will inform exactly how close we get to, but the commitment from both boards is that this will be a transparent process. As these studies are completed, they will be open and accessible to the entire public, and it will inform both boards in moving forward through the process. That's been a commitment that we said from the very beginning of this process. Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
No other questions. Thank you, Mr. Palmer and Mr. Dudley, for your presentation tonight.
Can I add forward if we do Any other commissioners have any questions before we close it out? Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Silver, second by Ms. Chambers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise.
I'd also entertain a motion to close, this meeting, of the Nash County Board of Commissioners. Motion by Ms. Richards, is there a second? Second, any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Thank you, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Have a safe trip home.